Yesterday, Madhya asked a very interesting question. So we begin our discussion with Madhya's question. Madhya talked about, say, development of human history, development in different fields, and her question was that if everything is unreadable as deconstructive theory, say, tries to emphasize, if everything is unreadable or something which cannot be deciphered or something which is just an effect of language, or in other words where something cannot be said in a determinate manner, then what of all these advances in human history? Am I right, Madhya? This was your question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mostly, and also that all the facts and scientific theories that
Right,
are there, so
right,
they collapse.
right. So this was an important question. And if we go by the logic of demand theory, then possibly we'll say that a political theory, philosophy, law, history, for that matter, all these subjects which try to say something determinate, they collapse, right? Now, this was an important observation. And I said that somebody like Terry Eagleton, who is a Marxist critic, he has taken up this subject, he has taken up this question in his observation on deconstruction in his chapter on post-structuralism. So this important thing that everything is just unreadable or everything is just, say, nothing can be deciphered clearly. Here we can also say that if we follow deconstructive criticism, then in this manner, one is not committing oneself to say anything. Think about that charge of excessive formalism against deconstruction. And you are saying that deconstruction is not committing to anything important, anything determinate, or anything relating to politics. So if Diman is writing, or somebody who takes his cue from Paul Diman is writing, then what that person is doing, say, evading all real questions, because ultimately one is talking about language and one is also emphasizing the impossibility that is there to say anything. That means language considers it impossible to say anything. So this is an extreme position, and especially this extreme position comes from the work of Paul Deman. Terry Eagleton uses a beautiful figure of a bar room bore. So just as a bar room bore sitting in a bar, drunk, talks about his failures, that I could have done this and this person deceived me. I could have done this, but this person deceived me. That means he's talking about his failures. You must have seen this kind of character in many films also, and in real life also. Language also becomes like barroom bore, where it talks only about its failure. That means language is talking only about its failure. So is this a good position? We can further elaborate. You know that new criticism also talked about, say, ambiguities. New criticism also talked about different meanings in a work. But ultimately, in new criticism, a poem was about the world. If there were multiple meanings, if there were ambiguities, but the poem was still about those things. But what happens in deconstructive criticism, that one is not able to decide which. In other words, in new criticism, what was elusive was experience. So one is talking about experience, but somehow that experience is not very easy to grasp. that experience is very elusive. That experience is tried, but somehow the poet speaks about his failure to grasp that experience. Here, instead of experience, it is language. Language is elusive. So, new criticism and deconstruction follow a kind of similar trajectory, but in new criticism, it is experience which is elusive, and in deconstruction, it is language which is elusive. And this is a far more fundamental position to say that language is elusive. Here we miss something. And what is that something? That language in real life performs many functions. And in post-structuralist theory, there is also the view of language as discourse. Language which is there in real life, language which is there, which is performing number of functions, language which is there to control people, language which is there to say threaten people, language which is there to say subjugate people, language which is there to persuade people. That means language performing all kinds of different functions. And this view of language we call language as discourse, something which is related not to long but rather to parole. Terry Eagleton makes this point very strongly that in deconstructive theory, often in many of those readings which were, say, encouraged by Paul Deman kind of criticism, what happens is that a critic chooses to talk about a work, or a critic chooses to talk about the work of another critic, and he tries to squeeze that work out of its positive meaning. That means whatever positive meaning is there, he's trying to just squeeze that positive meaning out. In traditional criticism, we try to say, look at the positive meaning in a work. But in this kind of reading, we are trying to see that there is no positive meaning as such. And here it becomes similar to the process of emptying what is called. There is one religious belief, what is this is called kenosis, Kenosis, kenosis. And kenosis actually refers to self emptying of Christ. That means Christ, his whole personality, he was emptied, and instead you had God's presence in him. I'll use a different, say, kind of imagery which you can understand. Many of you must have played those cards. Say, we all sometimes love to play indoor games, and usually, say, playing cards is a very, say, or it used to be a very favorite pastime earlier. Now people don't have that kind of leisure where they can play cards. But usually, what happens in a game of cards? Say there is a particular card. Say, for example, you are using 10 and you are using 9 and you are using, say, 8. These are numbers. So 10 is bigger than 9 and 9 is bigger than 8. If we follow one standard game, what is called code piece, we usually follow that kind of method. But there can be a game where if you don't have cards of, say, for example, which carry value, but rather where if you have just a card which has the value of 2, that becomes more important than the card which has the value of 10. In a way, emptying out something. A similar game, I wonder whether you have played that game. Anyone? There used to be a game of cards called Black Queen. Black Queen was just the opposite of court piece. It was, I mean, we used to play This game, Black Queen, was just the opposite of, say, court piece. What used to happen in court piece, if you had king, or if you had, say, jack, then these were important cards. But what used to happen in Black Queen, these big numbers used to become liability. So here, the idea is that if there is some good reading, is that which tries to empty out something positive from a text, like it happens in that practice, kenosis. This is a deconstructive approach. And this also means that if I study a particular work, if I study the work of a critic and I deconstruct that work, if I try to show that whatever positive meaning that is suggested by this reading actually is not positive reading, is not there, that positive meaning is not there, and I deconstruct that work, somebody will deconstruct my work, and then somebody will deconstruct the work of the person who deconstructed my work. It forms a kind of chain also. But ultimately, it is not committing you to say anything. The critic is not saying anything substantial. The critic is not saying something concrete. The critic is not saying something which can get him into any kind of trouble. So this means that it becomes a kind of game. It becomes kind of game where you are reading something, somebody else is reading your work, and so on. This chain continues. This kind of criticism looks very inventive also. It involves a lot of wordplay. It also is the result of very vast reading, and it looks very clever also. But it is refusing to say anything very, very concrete. In other words, it is avoiding a discussion of real life questions, politics, labor, injustice, class, and so on. Somebody who would have disagreed with this practice and somebody who actually did disagree with such readings was Jacques Derrida himself. And why was Jacques Derrida unhappy with these readings? Because these readings suggested a kind of institutional closure, whereas Derrida's work was questioning that institutional closure. So this is an important point. Jacques Derrida's work was political ultimately, though it was talking about its politics in a different manner. Why? Because Derrida was not denying the nature of everyday determinate truths. He was not denying that. What he was suggesting was that in many cases, the problem has a wider frame of reference. And that frame of reference comes from language, from the unconscious, from history. And so, if we think about Jacques Derrida's position, then his work was a kind of attack on all those practices which bring a kind of closure of practices, which in a way, which in a way center around the idea of a kind of foundationalism. In other words, if there are certain things in life which appear simple, but they have a very deep root, and Derrida's work was, in a way, an attack on many of those assumptions, and that's why his work was anti-foundational, anti-foundational. So that means the kind of readings which Paul Deman suggested, and those readings became very popular. But somebody who disagreed with those readings was Jacques Derrida himself. And Such readings became very popular, especially in American Academy, right? So I hope you have understood this part. Now we can possibly take up the work of another important critic. We mentioned his name yesterday. It is Hillis Miller. And Hillis Miller also comes from Yale School of Deconstruction. There was one beautiful essay written by J. Hillis Miller. And this essay was Critic as Ghost. Critic as Ghost. And this essay has been widely cited. And this essay is a kind of response to some of the ideas of M.H. Abrams. They were together at a conference. M.H. Abrams presented his position and Miller presented his position. Right. So it was not a kind of, say, direct exchange, but somehow in this exchange, you can see a position which is followed in traditional humanist criticism, which M.H. Abrams represents, and deconstructive criticism, which is represented by the work of Hillis Miller. But before talking about this little controversy, let me just make one more point, and again, it is a kind of response to Madiha's question. So often, when something is said, that something is also said in a very, very loud manner, so that it invites some kind of notice. So if we see, say, a kind of overdoing in many of the readings of deconstruction, that was also to make a point. That was also to make a point. And so here we are. M.H. Abrams first talks about certain assumptions of traditional humanist criticism. And what are those assumptions? He says that it is believed that one can make things, one can talk about things, and those things can be understood. One, if one reads some historical works, then those historical works can be understood. Maybe at some places, those historical works may not be understood. Maybe at some places, there will be some kind of misunderstanding about certain interpretations. But usually, when you read language, you understand, or at least your meaning of what the author is trying to say approximates to what the author is saying. There is that kind of approximation of meaning where you understand what the author is trying to say. On the other hand, if in reading a historical work, you get most of those things possibly, if not wrong, but rather you are left in two minds what is the writer trying to say. Then that may be permitted in historical fiction, but not usually in works which are trying to say something determinate. So M.H. Abraham makes his position very clear that when we read something and when it is not fiction, we understand those things mostly. We understand, say, usually everything about, if not everything about those works, then at least most of the things about those works. And then he says that in deconstructive theory, one begins with this assumption that language cannot say anything determinate. So there is this point of disagreement. Language can say something determinate, that is M.H. Abrams' position, and language cannot say something determinate, that is the position of Hillis Miller. And then he also talks about, M.H. Abrams talks about the method which is used in deconstructive criticism. Now, this method becomes important for us also. And he especially talks about two strategies which are used in deconstructive theory. And what are those two strategies? One is a strategy where everything is considered a text. That means here he is saying that Miller uses the concept of interpretation in a very general manner, right? That means not only linguistic text, but rather everything about the world, everything about the physical world also becomes a kind of text. He disagrees with this view. He says that language follows certain rules, and so language cannot be equated with other things in the physical world as such. But it is the second strategy which is much more important and which is followed in deconstructive theory. And that second strategy is the concept of trace. Concept of trace. And what is this concept of trace? You know that when a word is used, then the trace of other words can be seen in this word. And the trace of all those other words contaminates the meaning of this word. So the concept of trace is used by deconstructive theory, and how it operates in deconstructive criticism. Miller picks up one word or two words or some keywords in a text. So these keywords in a text, it may be just one word, it may be two words, it may be three, four words in a text. Then these words are taken up and they somehow appear as being suspended in the space, and there they suggest all kinds of different meanings. And how they will suggest different meanings? Because Miller will use the meanings of those words in different contexts. Miller will talk about those words in their historical context, how a certain word was used in history, how a certain word changed its meaning, how a certain word has all possible meanings, how a certain word has a particular root, and that root suggests other words. In other words, if one keyword is chosen or two keywords are chosen, and those keywords somehow appear hanging in space, taken out from the text, and then those words are read through their roots, through their different meanings, tracing the chain of meaning in history. And gradually, Miller will come to a particular point that there are all kinds of possible meanings which are suggested by that word, and one cannot make up one's mind about the meaning of those words. And so for him, the text will become indeterminable, the text will become undecipherable, the text will become unreadable. These are the words, and these are important words in deconstructive theory. Say indeterminable, something which is not determinate; undecipherable, something which cannot be deciphered; unreadable, something which cannot be read; undecidable, something which cannot be decided in clear terms. So this means that picking up those two words, picking up those keywords, or picking up one word, and say subjecting that word to different kinds of readings, and then it will suggest that that word possibly will reveal something about the nature of language. That word will reveal something about the nature of that text, and then text will become kind of undecipherable. Right. Now, if text cannot be deciphered, if it cannot be read, then why bother to read that? This is also a question. Why bother to read? Yes, why should we bother when we cannot make up our mind about the meaning of any text, when language is just talking about its own failure, when nothing can be said which is determinate? Why bother about the whole activity of reading? Why bother about the whole activity of interpretation? Why read at all? Why not do something else? And then here also Miller answers this question. And what is that question? And it is suggested through some analogs. It is suggested through some analogs. And what are those analogs? And here you have the example coming from mythology. You must have heard about Ariadne's thread, and you must have heard about Arachne's thread also. Now, here, just think about this mythological figure, Ariadne. Ariadne is associated with labyrinths, with mazes. You understand a labyrinth? You understand a maze? In Urdu, you'll call it bhool bhulaiya. If somebody is from Lucknow and somebody has seen that bhool bhulaiya in Lucknow, you know that a labyrinth is that kind of structure where you enter, but you cannot possibly come out of that labyrinth easily. So labyrinth. Now these labyrinth also have an important role in mythology, and especially in this story of Ariadne, where Ariadne is associated with those labyrinths. And there was one particular instance where she also saved somebody who was lost in labyrinth, Theseus. And how did that person actually come out that labyrinth? Because Ariadne also had a thread. So, for example, if you enter that labyrinth and you are also carrying a thread with you, and that thread is tied to all those places where you go in that labyrinth, so somebody can very easily retrace those movements and come out of that labyrinth. So, this is the whole, say, structure of a deconstructive reading also. There is another metaphor which is used to talk about this. And again, this metaphor also comes from Miller. And what is that metaphor? This metaphor is the spider's web. Spider's web. Now, if you see the web of a spider, there also you see a structure which is very similar to the structure of a labyrinth, where a particular thread starts and where it leads, and how you trace all those things in a web, it is also a difficult question. So what happens in deconstructive reading is that the pleasure lies in retracing those steps. So if the critic finds one illogical step, one illogical element in a text, then the critic tries to retrace all possible threads and will come to this particular point. So the critic knows at the very beginning that what language is saying is it is talking about its failure to communicate anything. And the text also is not saying something concrete. But then there is some joy in retracing all those steps, retracing that thread. So that means this becomes a very interesting kind of game. Why read? Okay, we read because we are trying to retrace the steps which were taken. So this is deconstructive reading. Now we can talk about Hillis Miller himself. Now this was M.H. Abraham who was talking about his method, and who was also talking about the method which is used by Hillis Miller. But Hillis Miller also responded to M.H. Abraham's charge. And how Hillis Miller responds to MH Abrams charge, we'll just talk in a minute. So can I just request you? Can I just request you to have another brief session, not a session of 40 minutes, maybe just a 10-minute session, 10-15 minute session after this, because I would like to complete this discussion today. I would like to just conclude this discussion. But if I have to talk about Hillis Miller, then we need at least 10-15 minutes more, right? So now you can come out with your observation about this method, and then we can resume our discussion after 5 minutes break. Yes.
This was again a kind of that deconstructive strategy which we discussed earlier in the metaphysics of absence, where we discussed the strategy about binary, how we break the binary, and then the privilege that is earlier there, it gets demolished, and then no other new binary is formed. So in this way we proceed with the deconstructive reading of a text. Is it
Have you
appropriate?
okay, what are those two figures? What are those two different kinds of images which suggest the work of deconstructive critics? What are those two figures?
So
Yes.
one, we can say the concept of trace.
What I wanted to remember was this say figure of Ariadne's thread, where Ariadne, who is a figure from mythology, who is associated with the mazes and labyrinths. So she also has that thread, and that thread is used by Theseus to retrace all the steps. And then the second image is the image of a spider's web. So
Spider web, yes, sir.
deconstructive reading is very similar to say this spider's web and also to Ariadne's thread. That is Miller talking about his method. So we resume our discussion
Okay.
after 5 minutes break because I will have to request for another meeting on Zoom.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.